Hello friends, thanks for joining me today. Let's take a tour of the garden in mid-June. A lot of things are in bloom, including the hydrangeas, which are looking fantastic this year. If you haven't already, please subscribe, hit like, and click that notification bell so you'll get all the upcoming videos. And if you're new to my channel, welcome to Heather at Home. This is my largest garden bed in the backyard. The yarrow is doing great this year, as is the Russian sage. The beard tongue is blooming nicely. The pincushions are looking great. Yesterday morning, I spent a lot of time going through this and cutting back the spent blooms from the first flush. And you can see all the new ones that are going to pop. New one. When you prune these, well, they get really tangly for one thing, so it takes time. You really need one of those comfortable pads. Just sit with your little snippers and go through it. But let's say I wanted to prune this one. I would take it all the way back to the joint where it came from. Or if there are a set of leaves, for instance, this one here, if you follow this stem back, you'll see that there's a new bloom that's going to come out. So I would cut that there. My daughter and I were at the garden center yesterday because I do have some gaps. Back here, I'm going to put a bellflower. They didn't have them in stock yesterday. If I can't find one this year, I'm going to hold that spot open and order one online next year from probably II Perennials. Now this is an annual lantana, and I'm in zone 7A in the US, and I've noticed when I've put in annuals, most of them come back the next year and the year after that. So I'm going to put this in here this week and see what happens next year. I think it's very beautiful. Look at the color here. Coreopsis is all over the place. I put these rings in. I didn't drive them deep enough into the ground. I will come back with my mallet and pound them in better. And this will continue to grow, so hopefully it will contain it. If it doesn't, I'll try a hoop. It's really hard to gather up, but I'll see what I can do with this because it parts right here in the center. And down here is the sedum, doing well. Here's a bare spot that's calling out for something. Now we have a black and bloom salvia here, which usually blooms really late into the fall. I'm surprised it's already blooming this early. I hope that it continues blooming all summer. So we have some shorter stems down here, so maybe those will be the later bloomers. I'll pop in a picture of this clematis, which I took a couple of weeks, maybe more than a couple weeks ago, when it was in full bloom. I was about to start traveling, and I wanted to grab a picture of it before I came back because I knew that most of the blooms would be spent. But we do have one left. And this tends to grow on the left side of the trellis and leaves a lot of blank space here. So I did pick up a traditional purple blooming clematis, which I still have to get into the ground. But that's already starting to wind into the trellis. So I thought having the two colors together would be a really pretty mix. Down here is a wallflower. It's pretty spindly. The blooms are really beautiful, but it's not very full. I had dug out a coneflower last summer that was diseased with Astor's yellow disease. And I wasn't going to put another one in, but I really miss having a coneflower, so I'm going to take a chance. Yesterday at the garden center, I picked up this beauty. I'll drop that in the ground this week. Look at all the new blooms ready to open. See, I hope that's not the leaf hopper. Hopefully that's a teeny tiny little grasshopper there. There's a certain leaf hopper that contaminates these, and then you have to dig them up. This salvia is a plant I put in the year I started my garden, and it's flourishing, beautiful purple blooms. And my second pincushion, I put these pincushions in last spring as tiny babies, and they really took off. And let me tell you, talk about repeat bloomers. They go from spring all the way through the fall. Really, really great. Just keep on top of pruning them and they will perform for months. Here are the phlox David, looking great. And then these are some phlox I put in towards the end of the summer last year. They're pinky purpley, and I see a cluster of buds. So these are mid to late summer bloomers. It's really starting to get that cottage garden look. Now we're going to swing around to the side garden bed. Last year and years prior, I put geraniums in the ground here. It's really hard to dig into this area. Their tree roots from this maple tree are super sprawling. This is a very mature tree. And the roots and the little tendrils from the roots make it very difficult to dig in this bed in this specific area. So earlier this spring, and if you might have seen the video, I decided to just buy a container and throw my geraniums and another annual in, and they're doing great. I love this Allison. This lily is really getting ready to pop. I will make sure that I capture these when they do bloom. I'll do another garden tour. But yeah, those are ready to pop. Matter of days. Well, the first flush has come and gone on this. I'll have to cut back most of it. We'll leave these little blooms behind, but it needs a good solid haircut, and then we will get another flush. So I picked up this obelisk from Lidl for $19.99, $20 basically, and assembled it, which was really not easy because it came in a little flat box. I didn't think it could be 6 feet tall, and it is. I put a Jacob's ladder in, and I want to find some sweet peas. I don't know if I'll be able to find any. The garden center didn't have any yesterday, so I may have to grow them from seed next year, but I want to put them in the back and have them grow up the obelisk. Now, if you watched my video this spring where I took out the anemones, clearly those tubers kept growing and spreading, and I still have some in here, so I'm still gonna have to take these out. They completely will take over a garden bed, which I did not realize when I put them in when my garden was new. The creeping phlox has come and gone. Now I just get the foliage. I'm going to have to pull some of this out though, because it will crowd out the rest of the bed. And this peony was beautiful when I bought it, was beautiful the first year or two when I got blooms, and it just hasn't flowered since. And it's so weird because it's such a healthy looking plant, and luckily it has a nice leaf pattern and shape, but I can't seem to get it to bloom. I put bone meal in. I'll try something else next spring. I'll try another fertilizer and see how that goes. Okay, so here's the Vanessa Bell rose that I cut back last year to a single stalk because I suspect that it has rose rosette disease, aka RRD. And it did flower. I'm going to pop a picture in. You will see from the picture in the close-up that the center of it has that witch's broom growth pattern, and I suspect that this is going to have to come out ultimately. The leaves aren't doing well. There's new growth over here. I'll give it one more chance, and if I get more witch's broom growth, I'm going to have to pull it out so it doesn't contaminate my other rows across the yard. The mites that cause RRD are very, very tiny. You can't see them with the naked eye, and they travel up to a mile. So if you have a rose with RRD, it's risky to any other rose on your property. Here's one of the 2 cat mints that a couple of neighborhood cats discovered and chewed on, rubbed on, and ultimately slept in and crushed them. So I wanted to show you this. I'm going to have to cut these back. There is new growth down here. So I'm going to have to cut them back to the new growth, hoop them to contain them so when the cats come back to get the new growth, they won't really be able to get in there. Hopefully that will work. I didn't realize that catmint is called catmint because cats are, some cats anyway, are truly attracted to it. It's almost like catnip to some cats, and that's the case in my neighborhood. This is the hydrangea that a couple of months ago I removed from a pot over across the yard under a tree because it was growing sideways looking for the sun. I didn't know if it would make it here, and it has made it, and we have blooms starting, and it's faring okay. Some of the leaves are dry. We also have new growth down here. So I'm feeling good about the prospects for this hydrangea. And we have the double bloom million bells. They're doing okay. Should have bought 3. There's a little empty gap in the middle. I might throw a begonia in there. The hydrangea is at peak. It's a bumper crop this year. And here's the funny thing. Last year, I had all of 2 flowers on this. And this year, I got this massive flush. I didn't do anything differently. I didn't cut anything back. I haven't the year prior. And this year I have a loaded hydrangea. And this is one of last year's annual salvias that came back full size, full bloom, absolutely gorgeous. Now this is the hosta I planted a few weeks ago. It's where that hydrangea had been planted, and this has done extremely well, and it's in flower and it's gorgeous. The Shasta daisies are peak right now. Look at how gorgeous these are. I planted these in honor of my late mother. Daisies were her favorite flower. And we have a little garden spider. See if I can pick him up. And this is my shade garden, kind of a little woodland garden. Got my creeping phlox, which have already bloomed. A couple of hostas. Some astilbe, which is starting to bloom. And this little one, it comes up every year, but it's so small and it never blooms. I don't know why. It's very weird. I planted this really pretty painted Japanese fern last spring, and it's coming along really nicely. This is the beard tongue that I put in a few weeks ago. It's had its first flush. And I'll insert a picture that I took before I traveled that shows them in bloom. So I'll be pruning these soon. Hopefully get a second flush and I'll share that with you. And the grasses are doing well. This David Austin rose has already had its first flush. So I pruned it this morning. But I'm noticing that the leaves have little spots. Some are eaten a little bit. Yeah, see, these look like Swiss cheese over here. Something is eating these. I looked on the back of them, I didn't see anything. I have seen these little flies around that look like little tiny house flies. They're kind of green, but they're not aphids. They're definitely not aphids. I've dealt with those in the past. So if anybody has any ideas, feel free to chime in. I'd be remiss if I didn't show you my alliums. I had 2 flowers last year, and this year I have 10. Thank you for joining me today, friends. Have a wonderful week.